Hi, I'm Lynn Ferris and welcome to my Capturing the Light YouTube channel. Today we're going to do a demo on painting negative space foliage. Negative space is a really important concept in watercolor. It can give you lots of layers and lots of depth without getting tedious. When I talk about negative space, what I mean is painting the background behind the object, not the object itself. So you're subtracting out the background. We call this being a subtractive medium. And the way I like to think about it is as though it was sculpture. So if you were doing a sculpture and I gave you a block of marble and I said, give me a figure, what you would actually do is carve out what's not figure. So essentially, we're going to be doing the same thing with watercolor. We're going to be painting layers. We're going to carve out the background to create objects. This will give you a beautiful multi-layered look without ever getting tedious. So let's get started. What I'm going to show you today is background foliage, kind of a wallpaper behind your main subject matter. So that means I need to do some underpainting to get rid of all the whites so that the whites don't compete with the foreground. So I'm going to start out by wetting the entire page and doing a mingled wet and wet glaze of the three primaries. I'm using cadmium yellow, you could use Hansa yellow, phthalo blue, and here and there just a little bit of alizarin crimson. I'm going to be careful not to mingle this alizarin crimson too much because it'll turn to gray since it's the three primaries. I also can't dry this with a hair dryer because it will turn it to gray. So I've got to set it aside and air dry it. You can see here it's going to dry a little softer and a little gentler than it looked when it was wet. Now I'm going to pick, I don't know, 2 or 3 areas of interesting color, and I'm going to draw some leaf shapes. This is background foliage, so I'm not worried too much about composition, design. I'm just looking for where some interesting color is. Here's what I mean by the difference between positive space and negative space. Now that it's dry and I've drawn those leaves, I want to paint a soft glaze of green over the background behind the leaves that I drew. I'll make a mixed green from phthalo green, warmed up with a little yellow, then neutralized with just a bit of alizarin crimson. Greens in nature always have a little bit of red to soften them. This will make a natural looking green that's transparent enough to let some of the underpainting show through. What I'm looking for here is a value that's dark enough that I can see the leaves I drew, but not so dark that I can't have any leeway with making further layers. I'm going to keep in mind that it looks darker wet than it does dry. This I can dry with a hair dryer. I'll draw a second layer of leaves that will appear to be behind the first ones, even if for ease of drawing, I'm drawing over top of the first ones. So here you can see where I've drawn the second layer of leaves, and I've let them overlap the first just because it's easier to draw, but I have to always keep in mind that I'm painting behind them. I'm also always going to be painting behind that first layer that I painted. So now I'll paint another layer of background, painting around both the first leaves and the second ones. I'll use a similar green mixture, but I'll have a little bit less water in it so that it'll be a little bit darker. So this is the second layer of background paint, and you can see a few little splotches and backwashes in it. that's okay, because that's going to add to the texture on the leaves and add to the interest. So it's not something that you want to worry about. It's actually something that's a good thing. When it's dry, I'll repeat the process with more leaves and slightly darker paint, always leaving what I've already drawn unpainted. You can continue with this process of drawing and painting with darker pigment for as many layers as you like. Remember to dry each layer before starting the next. Usually a total of 5 layers is good, but more layers will add even more depth. You just want to be sure to run out of space at the same time as you're running out of values. Kind of like running out of the chips and the salsa at the same time. So at any point, if it starts to get confusing with pencil lines over top of pencil lines, you can just go ahead and erase them, because you won't need too many after this. So I'm just going to continue this process until I'm down pretty close to dark and most of my space is gone. At the end, for the last layer, you won't need to draw. You'll just need to take a look at what you've got and see where there might be areas that look a little flat. You'll mix up a dark, a saturated blend of phthalo green and alizarin crimson balanced towards the green. There's no need to add yellow in this mixture. It'll be not quite a black, but almost a little green, and you'll fill in the nooks and crannies. Here it is, layered negative space background foliage. So thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you in a workshop sometime. Happy painting.